normally the continue screens where you would enter the password. But it looks like it saved it. And now we can hit end. And when we load that password, it drops us right back into the game. Interestingly enough, it drops us back in after the Colosseum fight and the first Arma fight. What we can do is go to Talon and I'll explain kind of what that password did. Now, Demon's Crest doesn't really have a New Game Plus mode per se. It has something a little bit different that was kind of unique for the time. If we go into our inventory, we have all of the unlocked items, all the vellums, all the urns, and all the talismans, and all of the crests. If you look at the right on the actual Demon's Crest itself, it's got all the crests and a new one that we didn't have when we beat the game and took out Phalanx. And that's the one in the very bottom middle. That is the Crest of Heaven. And as a result, we have a new form here, the Ultimate Gargoyle, which is the result of the Crest of Heaven. When we use this particular power, we get a slight palette swap version of the Legendary Gargoyle. Firebrand's a little more purple, and he has blue wings, and he has this sort of almost Hadoken-looking projectile. I believe the point of this form is that it combines the attributes of every form in the game, and I think the Demon Fire damage boost. If we take a look at the abilities, we have our regular hover, but if we hit A, now we can ascend, just like the Aerial Gargoyle. When we're on the ground, when we hit A, we now have the Dashing Charge from the G Gargoyle. If we were to go into the water, which I won't do on the next screen here because I don't want to have to go all the way through the level again, we have the ability to go underwater, and by hitting up and A, we can headbutt per normal. In the water, you basically have free swimming mode, just like the Tidal Gargoyle. Instead of the swimming animation, Firebrand uses his flapping animation, and you can swim laterally using A button, just like you could before. And finally, the last new thing with this form, if you hold down Y, the fire button, Firebrand slowly charges up, and he spits a charge projectile, Mega Buster style. And it does quite a bit of damage. It just takes a little bit to charge up. What we can do is we can put on the Fang Talisman. Just to sort of demonstrate, what we can do is go back and take a look at the Colosseum. Using this particular mode, what the game has essentially done is dropped us in at the beginning of the game, but with all those power-ups. And basically, you can play through the whole game again. The bosses and sequence of events are unchanged. Basically, if you wanted to do sort of a revenge run, you could play through the game again with the Ultimate Gargoyle and basically demolish everything. You can go back and do fights that you would have done earlier on when you weren't well geared and basically steamroll everything, which is kind of neat. I don't think this is a super common feature for a lot of games that came out in this time. And it took 2 hits to kill the Hippogriff. What we could do is we can go through the rest of this level, get up to the fight with Arma, and then see how long it takes to kill him. I'm going to try and test the charge projectile against Arma. As a result of getting the New Game Plus password, it basically means you can play through the game at any point with essentially full gear unlocked. Or you could play through it per normal and do normal run. All of the previous pickups are not here since we already have all of the equipment. The urns, vellums, talismans, and whatnot. They will not be here. Interestingly enough, the animation is the same for the ascension as just the regular hovering, which is a new type of animation for this sprite, since the aerial gargoyle is the one that had the ascend ability before. They had to add in the frames for this particular animation, which is kind of neat. Alright, we get the same dialogue. Alright, one projectile. Arma's a little bit of a fast target. This might be challenging to hit. 2 projectiles. Instead of the crest, the bosses will drop a full health power up and you clear the level. What we can do is go to town. There is a point to doing this New Game Plus mode, but before I go into the additional content, I'm going to need to actually refill my potions. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to cut the footage here because it's going to take me a minute to get enough gold to refill all of my urns. And what I'll do is I will do that here and then cut back so we can proceed. That way I'm not adding an additional 20 minutes or so to the Let's Play. So we will skip to progress using the power of editing. Okay, after doing all the farming, I'm full up on ginseng. We've got all of our potions here. Before we head back onto the overworld map, we can switch to Ultimate Gargoyle and talk to this guy. And he says, "Hey, you're the one who defeated Phalanx, aren't you? I owe you my thanks because I did not like the laws we were forced to keep. No offense, but demons shouldn't have the power to rule, know what I mean?" Well, this guy's proven that he's loyal to nobody. But that's fine. For the record, I did look up on the wiki for the characters, and this particular guy isn't named. It's just the Vagrant demon. But I think we are good to go for proceeding to the actual new content for the post-game. If we head up the map towards the north, we have Phalanx's castle. Now, according to what the Vagrant demon said, canonically, since we have the Crest of Heaven in our possession, according to the quote-unquote story, we've killed Phalanx and taken him out. If we were to go back to his castle, we could proceed through the sequence of fights and fight him again and go through the ultimate battle and everything else, and nothing would change. We'd still get the same cutscene, and I believe it would still give us the same password. If we head northeast from Phalanx Castle, we see on the map there's a new point of interest. This particular sprite, which is the same as Phalanx's castle, it's identical. This point doesn't show up until you do New Game Plus with the password. And this is going to be where we need to go for the final content for Demon's Crest. Upon entering, we have Unbreakable Statues, which is a unique model. we have an underwater section, which is a good opportunity to show off what the lateral swimming ability for the Ultimate Gargoyle looks like. Basically, it's the same flight animation, just underwater. Then once we get out of the water, we have a breakable door. And right away we're dropped into the true final boss battle. Actually, we'll switch to armor. This is the Dark Demon. And we don't really get an in-game explanation of this boss at this point. We just dropped in and it's a fight. But this is the last major boss of the game. And can only be accessed, like I said, through the password. And when it's in this particular form, the Dark Demon will orbit the room, spit those sphere projectiles, and try and flood the room with lava, at which point the only safe spot is directly below it. After it's flown around for a while, the Dark Demon will change forms from the charioteer to this sort of dark angel demon thing, and in this form it will spit out projectiles, a lot of projectiles, and the little blue spheres in this form will actually turn the walls into spikes. And then once it's done that for a little bit, it'll switch back to the charioteer form and resume the old attack pattern. Because there's a lot of things going on in this particular form, I'm going to switch the armor talisman for here, and then when it changes to the Dark Angel form, I'll swap back to Fang for straight damage. When you land a hit, the boss will flash black, and when it's doing that, it can't be hit again. So this form, it's actually not possible to spam shots. When it's in the charioteer form, it doesn't do this. So you can technically land a lot of shots as long as you have a clear path to hit it. Problem is it moves around a lot in the other form, and only takes damage on its upper body. Getting hits in is a little more difficult. And the little blue projectiles here will block shots and keep me from actually hitting the boss. And they home in on your position. Compared to Ultimate Phalanx, it's hard to say which boss fight is more difficult. The Dark Demon, I think, is a little bit easier to hit because you can basically line yourself up and hit it in this particular form and the other one, versus Ultimate Phalanx, you can only shoot him in the face. But I think the overall attack pattern that you have to be careful of in this form is tougher to deal with. There's these blade scythe things flying every which way constantly, and every time you do damage in the angel form, it shakes the room. Oh boy. Plus, because I'm using the Ultimate Gargoyle, I'm a bit more mobile. I have the ability to fly upwards. So maneuverability is a little bit easier than when you first fight Ultimate Phalanx, but they're both difficult boss fights in their own right. And I think it's interesting that the endgame content for Demon's Crest, with both Ultimate Phalanx and this particular boss, are not necessarily something that people playing the game for the first time would have experienced. For the Ultimate Phalanx fight, unless you were following a guide and knew where all the stuff was, chances are you wouldn't fight him in his final form the very first time. And as a result, I think a lot of people wrote the game off as being too easy. Because both these fights, going through them even now, after playing through this game quite a few times, it is not easy content. For Super Nintendo era, there was definitely no shortage of challenging games, but one you don't hear people talk about very frequently is Demon's Crest, which is kind of a shame. Oh, you can't shoot it when it's doing the sort of lava charge thing here. I guess that's sort of a good chance to try and spam hits on the boss before the lava comes down. And the health pools are shared between both forms of the Dark Demon here. If you do enough damage to both, then the fight will end. But I don't believe this boss changes color. I could be wrong. You just have to keep doing damage. And run our last potion. Ooh, boy. I don't think it's going to be as efficient to use the charge projectile because the boss moves around so much. It's not going to really matter so much as I think getting consecutive hits. I might die this time. Yep. Well, looks like I will have to refill all my supplies and come back. So what I will do is I will cut and jump back to that particular fight, and we'll pick up from there.